welcome to the first episode of Triathlete Magazine's first ever podcast. I'm Kelly O'Mara, the editor-in-chief at Triathlete, and every week right here on this podcast, we're going to be bringing you a mix of news, a little opinion, and then, an interview from a star of the sport. And for the first couple weeks, we're going to have rotating co-hosts as we kind of try and figure out what works, what you guys like, what you don't like. So if you don't like our co-host today, don't tell me. Don't tell her. No, I'm kidding. Because today we have, as our first co-host here, Sarah True. So thank you, Sarah, for coming and agreeing to my very vague email that was like, I have an idea. Come help me out.
Thank you for having me. If you don't like me as a co-host, don't let me know. I'm very fragile right now. Kelly's very fragile right now. We only want positive reinforcement.
Yes, we are all very fragile right now because actually we were supposed to meet in Boulder, but we're meeting via the internet in the age of social distancing now. So that might also be why it sounds a little weird. We're testing this all out. But you actually saved me, speaking of Corona, from flying to Boulder. The fact that I was supposed to fly from SFO to Boulder last weekend, Sarah, and do a bunch of work stuff, whatever. And I'd been on the fence. And after you were like, Kelly, I can't do it. Coronavirus. I'm holding up in my house. I was in the airport and I thought, this is insane. I'm canceling my flight. So you talked sense into me. You saved me from being on lockdown and getting stuck in the airport.
I'm only good at giving information. I can't actually take it. So I'm glad that you are home instead of in Boulder. I mean, Boulder's a lovely place, don't get me wrong. But I think right now, probably everybody being home, that's for the best.
That's for the best. So if you don't know Sarah True, I guess we should say, if you don't know Sarah True, I don't know why you're listening to a triathlon podcast. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. But if you don't know Sarah True, you should know Sarah True. Fourth at the Olympics, fourth at Kona, winner of many other things too, to be clear, not always fourth.
Fourth it keeps me humble, man.
So first question for you though.
Yeah.
I mean, we're recording this on March 19th. So let's be clear, by the time this airs, who knows what'll happen in the universe. But you raced in Campeche last weekend, which by all appearances is going to be the last race for a long, long time now. I mean, how did that race even go off? Were you not sure if you should be there? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, even driving to the airport, I was texting my coach and asking him, should I still be doing this? And basically we came to the realization that no matter what, I was going to be in lockdown when I got home. I wasn't going to be in contact with anybody except for my husband, Ben. So the risk of transmission was going to be very limited potentially if I contracted COVID-19. But in hindsight, there shouldn't have been a race. It just, everything escalated really quickly. And if you follow global politics, you realize that the Mexican response has been pretty lax. So basically, Obrador's really, this is the president of Mexico, he's really concerned about the economy. Last year, I think they had 0% growth. And basically, he decided that he wanted life to go ahead as normal for a time being. As a result, there was nothing coming from the government to the race escorganizers to not have a race. Everything obviously escalating
I don't
very
think that's
quickly.
shocking. Yeah, I mean, given how Mexico races go down, I'm not shocked, but it's also, I mean, you almost can't blame people for not knowing what decision to make right now. It's I was standing in the airport when I canceled a flight. You can't even tell. Yeah. Yeah.
And here, I'm well informed. I'm a relatively rational person and I still raced. And so I'm, obviously I was part of the problem. And I've realized that, my ambivalence about the experience, my ambivalence about the race was definitely rooted in the sense of shame, realizing that, we have a social obligation to each other to really limit potential exposure. And here I was being the biggest hypocrite of all. But then the other part of me, who's the athlete, I'm like, this is the last race in the world.
It's going to be the last race for a long time.
It was totally a selfish decision. I mean, there was a reason why I think those of us who did go and race, we weren't posting about it on social media. I didn't make single mention of it. So thanks for outing me, Kelly.
Yeah, I know. Well, I only realized like later because you had been all vague about how you weren't in Boulder.
Yeah, but very practically, like it's hard when you have sunk cost. So like this is where like the financial side, it gets in the way of our rational processing where I'm like, I haven't made money in a while. Like here's an opportunity to make money. And it's going to be months until we race again. Totally not rational. Totally regret it. But yeah, I
mean, it was really fast this past weekend. It was, I'm out in California where people have taken it like pretty seriously, pretty quickly. And still the difference between like Wednesday and Saturday of last week was rapid.
Yeah.
But it is going to be the last race for a while. I think we all know that now. So you're not going to be making money for a while. And I've been wondering, how is that working in the pro world? Like, what are you guys going to do? How are you making a living? I mean, your husband's also a pro runner. Yeah. So it's not like you have another paycheck to fall back on here.
No. So, I think regardless of your profession, we're all adjusting to what the world is going to look like in a few months, and probably for the next few years. So the realization that we've had it pretty good. Like, we will always have sport. I think there's no question about that. Regardless of how the economy does, we're always going to have sport. It's a question of how much money is going to be in sport and whether or not people can make a living doing it full time. So that landscape is going to change a lot. The marketing world's going to change a lot. And we're realizing that, when contracts come up for the ends of the year with sponsorship, a lot of companies are going to struggle this year and not be able to renew contracts. Marketing budgets are going to be slashed. We won't be able to race for 6 months, probably. We're hoping that, there will be race opportunities probably in the fall. Yeah. But, they're talking about the Olympics being moved, possibly canceled. So all of a sudden, it's just, we're very quickly having to realize where we are, in the social fabric of the economy, and our jobs are expendable. And we're fortunate to be able to do what we do. So it's, at some point, we're going to have to get real jobs. And it just
it sounds like you're having a whole existential crisis right now.
Totally.
Yeah.
I know I'm not alone. I know. I think I've kind of come around where I realize how fortunate we are to be able to have jobs in sport and to have had years where that's possible, where I think of somebody who is a new pro this year.
Oh yeah, they are not going to have a good first year. That is
and it rough. Might, when we get through to next year, it's going to be hard because a lot of these companies are really, really going to struggle. So I was able to be a professional athlete during a really fortunate era. So I just,
yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about that a lot.
Pretty
too.
Heavy.
I know. We're like, sorry guys, sorry, bummer.
Sorry. Yeah,
right at the beginning.
Podcast. No, but I think it is. I think it's important to really. We realize where sport stands, and sport is there to keep us connected, to keep us healthy, to keep us sane. But where it is in terms of priorities, like it's okay to realize it's not the center of everything.
Yeah. I mean, there was even an article today in the New York Times about how running is actually having a boom right now as people like need the sanity. People who haven't run at all, you're allowed to, even in lockdown, like even here and stuff where there is shelter in place, you're allowed to go for exercise still. So all of a sudden people, it's like the one thing they can do. So it's like, and running without racing is just getting back to, running. It's so, yeah, I am curious. I've been thinking about this a lot because, Triathlete is a magazine as well.
Yeah.
And we have sponsors and we have advertisers. And once everyone comes out of their quarantine in 2 weeks and realizes, the economy tanked in the meantime, like it's going to be rough for a little while for sure. So,
yeah, well, I don't think, listen, this is going to be, let's be real. Like if it matches current projections, we're going to have a very deep recession. But sport will go on. And it's
people will still do it. Yeah.
People will still do it. We might be going back to basics, like, people not getting fancy bikes every year.
Yeah.
And I think there's potential to remind us why we do this.
Okay. I like that. I like the positive spin there.
No,
okay.
It's true. So I would like to think that we are going to be turning more to our local races, and just kind of that grassroots part of the sport, I'd like to think is really going to be, have a resurgence.
Let's hope so, because there's been an argument that part of the sport has been already been struggling. So,
well, I know, but I think as people realize that financially they can't allocate as much resources towards fancy bikes and towards, big travel to go to an Ironman branded race on the other side of the world, they start looking around for local challenges and being part of their community more. I mean, I would like to think that, we'll see. We'll see. Let's talk in 18 months.
So what's the word I'm looking for here? Sidebar for a second. You just took over. I used to co-host a podcast with my friend Sarah Gross.
Oh, yeah.
And you just took over for me on that podcast after I took this new job. But we used to do something we called Let's Speculate Wildly. So we're going to speculate wildly and hope that grassroots racing comes back, that people realize that they go back to, let's just create challenges, the old school, like how fast can we run up that hill? How fast can we get across this lake? Like just back to the basics. So,
but we've been seeing it in other sports. I mean, there's a reason why the ultra community is really strong in running. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why, gravel racing is a really big scene. I think, it's time for triathlon to have that similar, like, grassroots, get dirty, who cares how fast you're going, let's just do this challenge together kind of mentality.
Okay, so there you go, triathletes. Sarah True is challenging you to get dirty and stop caring about your times. So.
Exactly, yeah. I'm not speculating wildly, I'm just telling the truth here.
That'll be your new segment, not speculate wildly, truth telling. So. You mentioned that there's talk about the Olympics being postponed or even canceled. And I think at this point right now, no one really wants to make that call yet, but certainly it could happen. It would be a big thing if the last time the Olympics got canceled was for the war, right? Like it would be crazy.
It was also when it was being held in Tokyo, right?
True. Yeah, I guess that's true. So, I mean, you used to be in the ITU circuit. I don't know if you still talk to lots of ITU people. I mean, how are people dealing with that? What's going to happen with the Olympics? Like, as an Olympian, tell me about the Olympics, Sarah.
Yeah. So actually, right now I have inside information because I am one of the selectors for our team. I helped drop the criteria with 3 other individuals, and they haven't said anything to the athletes because it's purely speculative, and the IOC at this point. So what day? The 19th, March 19th, the IOC has flat out said Olympics are still on at the end of July.
Yep.
But there's enough chatter that, outside of any official channels, I think it's highly unlikely it'll happen then. The athletes themselves are just putting their heads down and doing the best they can. But it's really hard to prepare in the middle of a global pandemic. So yeah, they're doing what they can. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe,
there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money there that wants it to happen.
And that's why they are not going to make the decision unless they're forced to. But the risk of this virus, obviously, we want to try to, slow exposure, but what happens in a couple of weeks when, we have to leave quarantine? Basically, wild speculation. So we're going to go into this. So my prediction, based on just way too much reading of the news and my creative imagination, my understanding of the economy, which is super limited, I think we're going to have to make a choice between the economy and going the route of exposure to a lot of people in the country and essentially having to triage patients in the ICU. And that's going to be really tough. But I think my understanding is that if we isolate people the way we're currently doing for too long of a period of time, way more people are going to suffer.
There's a cost
from a sharp downturn in the economy.
Yeah. Because eventually people start to die because they can't afford food, right? Like there's a balance there.
There's going to be a point at which we have to allow people to resume because the economy is going to be in the toilet too much.
They have already canceled. I just saw yesterday they canceled the WTS race in the UK for June.
Yes.
But at the same time, they haven't canceled the Yokohama race in Japan in May. So clearly there's they can't decide. And Yokohama is supposed to be the last qualifier for most of the teams, like the last qualification event.
Well, they have been talking about pushing back the qualification. So I don't quote me on this, but
you are on air.
Sarah. I know. Jeez, right. You're not a reporter. You're a podcast host right now. The qualification window has been extended, so they will continue to get points that help with qualification. And it's obviously country by country, how you qualify for the Olympics changes, but it's closer to when the games are slotted.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I do think they're going, if the Olympics happen, a lot of countries are going to go to a discretionary, I would imagine, in some way.
Yeah, you have to. But how do you, I think of, going back to my husband, Ben, he's a runner, track and field trials are at the end of June.
Yep.
So you have two issues. One being, you have to have a trials with athletes who have qualified for trials. And a lot of the spring season would have allowed people to have qualifying times to just get to the Olympic trials. So for track and field at the U.S., basically it's top 3 per event as long as you have the not just the trial standard, but the Olympic standard.
Right.
So to get people on the start line at trials is going to be one issue. To get people with the Olympic standard is a second issue. So how you can't choose on discretion.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's
going to just be like whoever has the Olympic standard gets to go to Tokyo now.
Potentially for track and field, but what if you have 10 people at the standard?
Right.
Do you just pick the fastest? It's
probably,
and it's every sport, it's anything that's time based. Obviously, like if you were totally discretionary, kind of like soccer, for example, that's one thing. But if you're talking about an individual sport, this is a very, very critical period of time for selection. So there's going to be so much pushback from the individual governing bodies that either they're going to postpone until the winter or they're going to have to just cancel it. And I think, like you said before, there's so much money on the line. I have a hard time believing they're going to cancel it, but it's possible.
You're like, oh man, yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I didn't realize you were on the selection committee.
Yeah.
Now I have all these questions.
I was super pumped. It's exciting to be part of that. Yeah.
Right. So now you have to explain, because now I have all these questions, because I have been very curious.
Right.
We're like going to stop talking about Corona for a second, for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But I have been very curious about triathlon's Olympic selection criteria. Arguably, they are very, very, very fair, right? They're very detailed. It's like a whole system. I'm sure you can sum it up very fast. But it's not super exciting for fans. Fans love the marathon trials. They love the track and field trials.
Yes.
Track and field trials are like good TV, but not super fair, right? Brutal, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So why did you guys decide to go that way and not the way of, getting more people, making it more exciting?
Quite honestly, to maximize medals.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, based on results, the past couple of years, we have an excellent shot at individual medal for the women, and we have an excellent shot at the mixed relay medal. Our men's program's developing, and we do have an outside shot with a couple of athletes, but our job is to maximize potential medal potential. So the way we wrote the criteria is basically, hey, listen, if you're good enough to contend for an individual medal, you'll probably make the team based on our criteria. Outside of that, we basically reserve the right to select to maximize our possibility for getting a medal in the mixed team relay. So
what is different about picking for mixed team relay that you don't just want the fastest? I've always wondered that. What strategy is there?
One is a 15-minute race and one's a 2-hour race. So,
okay.
Both skills and physiologically very different. You need to think tactically. You need to think about athletes who, if there's a gap, do they have the ability to cover it? Do they have those skills? Which is different than, a lot of the IT races. You want to pick based on who's going to do really well in a 15-minute race, essentially.
Okay.
And sometimes
so
it's the same athlete.
Relay. Right.
Yeah.
Right,
so sometimes, reigning world champion Kita Zafiris, I have a hard time believing she wouldn't be on the mixed relay.
I have a hard time believing she's not going to make the team. Yes.
Well, the team in general, but also because you can only have 2 men, 2 women. So we should have 3 men, 3 women. I would listen. It's going to be whoever looks the best for the relay. But I would say there are teams that are going to be selecting athletes purely for the mixed relay. They don't even care about individual. I think we kind of have a mind towards both. We haven't groomed athletes necessarily specifically for the relay, unlike other countries.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I didn't realize so many people were that into the relay.
Well, it's a medal.
Yeah. Okay. I just keep thinking of it as this quirky, fun side thing. Oh, that's cool.
No, ultimately, so we had 2 medals in triathlon, 1 per gender. All of a sudden, you're basically doubling opportunity. So if you think of it that way, it's just as important. And because there's far less depth in the mixed team relay, you can only have a handful of teams present, and very few countries have 2 super strong women, 2 super strong men. So you're not talking about a lot of depth. So we're going to lean hard into the mixed team relay.
Okay. All right.
Quite frankly, it's easier to get a medal.
There's fewer people. Yeah. There's fewer. Okay. Interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. Do you think, though, obviously we are. Do you think we're losing anything, though, with not having the excitement of fans? Triathlon used to have a national championship that was a qualifier. Right. You know what I mean? Do we not, we don't have that anymore. Are we losing something with that?
did you watch the test event last year?
In San Diego?
No.
Oh, the Tokyo one. Yeah. I thought you were talking about the last time I was in the U.S.
No,
the Tokyo test event.
Did you follow that?
The Tokyo one?
Yeah.
That shit was
super
crazy.
Exciting. That was super exciting. That was essentially the race. You know, that's the one you're talking about right there.
So you think that we just need to get people in the U.S. to follow whatever the big, to follow Yokohama or whatever the big test event is.
Yeah. Because
but I didn't even think about it that I thought of the last one that was in the U.S., like the San Diego back before the Olympics.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think people in the U.S. don't even think outside the U.S.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's one of the very, coming from ITU, you realize that in the U.S. we just don't really pay attention to it outside the Olympics.
No.
And there are some super fans, and I love you guys. So thank you for being super fans of ITU. But for the large part, the fandom, that's the correct word,
fan
right?
Base, the fan, yeah.
No, the fandom for Ironman is much stronger.
Yeah.
So
there's a whole argument that they get to actually, age group athletes get to actually do Ironman. So they feel a connection. Yes.
Totally. So but I was shocked at the difference.
When you moved from ITU to Ironman.
You can disagree with me, but just purely as a spectator, a 2-hour lapped race is way more interesting to watch than people just down on their bars for hours on end. There's a lot more going on in an ITU race than there's and I love Ironman. I love following it. But if you're just talking purely from the spectator standpoint, the difference, like you said, is that there's no real firsthand experience with the ITU stuff if you're an amateur triathlete. And ultimately, watching watching Kona and what Jan Frodeno is able to do, you can connect with that and you realize how freakishly fast he is. Whereas watching him, when he won the Olympics, you can appreciate it, but it's different. Yeah, it's different context.
When you went ITU to Ironman, did you feel like your fan base grew at all? Did you feel like there was more people? I mean,
totally.
as popular as triathletes are.
No, totally. And I mean, part of what I really liked is that you actually get to engage with people. Whereas ITU, you just see the same, 70 people week in, week out. And you don't really interact a lot with the amateur side of sport. So what is really cool about Ironman and long course is that you're lining up for check-in, next to somebody who, does a 17-hour Ironman, and it doesn't matter. You're both doing the same course. You're doing the same race. And I don't know. I do like that part of it. So I was surprised. I was sad as an ITU athlete, and I'm sad now, looking back on it, that we couldn't really gain the same level of support that Ironman athletes can from our amateur, counterparts. So internationally, it's covered a bit better on TV. So you definitely have, I would say I went from having a more international support to more US based support when I shifted in distance, which is really interesting because I was representing the US, for so many years. And now I'm just representing Sarah.
I'm just representing Sarah. I mean, I'm honestly not sure though what could be done. I mean, what do you think could be done to get people more into the ITU? People always tell us, we always get complaints, oh, you should cover it more. And you're like, I mean, we don't, cover it as much as we cover any random Ironman race outside of Kona. It's just sort of, that is what I can tell you what people click on, Sarah.
Yeah.
And I know.
It ain't ITU. Yeah, no.
No.
Well, people want to know how to go faster in what they do.
Yes.
And if you're not doing ITU, there's nothing you feel like you can really glean from those athletes. Whereas that's the perception, right?
Right. I was gonna say there are some things you could learn from them for sure.
Totally. But that's the perception. And versus, if I don't know, Patrick Lange's talking about his run sessions, you're like, well, we do the same distance. We do the same stuff. Like maybe an article on his run sessions, like I can learn a few pointers.
Right, you're like, don't try Patrick's run sessions, guys.
No. But
yeah, no, I'm kidding. But yeah, that's
the same thing as like, if Katie's talking about what bike workout she's doing, might not be directly applicable to the person, but they're going to be interested in the distance that they actually do themselves.
I mean, it's the same way like marathoners, and I'm sure like your husband Ben, like marathoners are way more popular in the mass participation than 1,500 meter runners or 5K runners on the track. Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, the amount of money in elite marathoning is staggering.
Is this what you're going to take up next? Are you saying?
No. I'm not fast enough. I'm like 30 minutes too slow.
But the Olympic marathon trials were really cool. And that's what made me think about kind of our qualification, because so many people got into the Olympic marathon trials who are never going to be in the Olympics. But I mean, we got into it emotionally, got invested, we're cheering, we're out there. Yeah. So. Hi, guys. I just wanted to cut in here to say thank you for listening to our first ever podcast, the Triathlete Hour. And be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, so that you won't miss any of the things we have planned or coming. All interviews, news, everything you want to know about triathlon. Now, let's get back to it. But I do wanted to know, something had been bothering me. Something had been bothering me all winter, Sarah. Bothering me all winter. Yeah.
Oh, geez. Lay it out.
No, here's my question. It's a very deep question. Lots of pros go to like warm places in the winter. Why the hell would you go to Boulder?
Because I live in New Hampshire, so Boulder is warm.
I was like, what?
Yeah. It's much warmer than New Hampshire. So you can ride outside most of the winter. There are only a few days where it's, pretty miserable. Really, because it was supposed to be an Olympic year, I basically gave Ben the choice of where he wanted to go. And so I'm like, where do you want to go, man? And he's like, well, there are runners I can be with in Flagstaff and there are runners I can be with in Boulder. And we looked at the driving time, and from New Hampshire, Flagstaff's 38 hours, and to Boulder, it's 30 hours. So we were like, okay, let's go to Boulder.
That was the basis of your entire plan. It seems seems like weak logic here. I'm just going to say.
And I was excited because I was able to swim with Julie Dibbins and her group. And I've been very lonely training by myself in New Hampshire. So I was excited about that. And I've spent time in Boulder. I know it well. There's good coffee, all the important things in life, good trails. But,
right. Yeah. Okay. I was just like, have they not heard of California? What is happening here?
Too many cars in California, too many people. And that was definitely too far of a drive. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been training all winter. Obviously, I mean, we can't even say like what your plans are because who even knows what anyone's plans are. But
there are probably going to be no races until the fall. The sooner that people wrap their heads around it, the better.
I know. I like haven't emotionally accepted that yet because
get to that point. Get to that point, Kelly.
Get there faster. But okay, so we're not going to talk about your plans because the plans are what they are. But let's talk about last year, because last year was, I mean, it was rough. It was rough to watch for you last year.
Yeah.
It was like, because, okay, I'm going to sum up real fast and it's going to be depressing and you're not going to cry.
Oh, jeez. La, 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 la.
Okay, so Kona 2018, you got fourth, but like, holy shit, at the end of that, you were like collapsing. Like heat, it looked bad. Then you went to Ironman Cairns in the spring, blacked out on the run, DNF'd.
Yeah.
Then you went to Ironman Frankfurt. I can never remember his hamburger. Frankfurt.
700 meters from the finish.
And I mean, if you haven't seen that video, guys, go and Google that video. I mean, it's ugly to watch. She's like wobbling back and forth and falls over. But I've heard you say you actually were fine. I don't know.
Yeah. So, like I was still moving forward. Like my heart rate was normal. Like, so basically we think that I cooked my brain in Kona in 2018. And basically like the part of your brain that governs internal temperature, it's a little wonky now. So my brain will shut down my body way before I'm actually in any sort of distress. So in Frankfurt, I was not like, none of my signs would have indicated I was actually in distress beyond the interpretation of my brain. And that's why everything looks really weird. It's definitely motor control, but like, yeah.
But you felt okay. You just were like tipping over, but you felt all right.
No, like I was going in and out of consciousness, but everything basically from the neck down was fine. Yeah. But it's just your nervous system. Like it was a neural response.
That's weird.
Yeah.
But somehow you came back and I don't remember. I think you did Mont Tremblant, right? But you qualified for Kona. And I was like, I don't even know how she's going to do Kona after this year. Like, how is that even, how does your brain even let you get there is basically what I kept wondering.
It didn't. It didn't because I started to black out on the bike. And at that point, like I had fried my body and probably my nervous system so much that we really, really needed to have a legit off season. Yeah.
So you took a lot of time off after that. So you feel like recovered now? You feel like you're better about this? Like, how do you come back from that kind of a year?
The brain stuff could be permanent. I was supposed to go and see, get testing at this whole, there aren't a lot of people who do like autonomic system dysfunction in athletes. And I was going to go down to Vanderbilt and get testing, but that didn't work out. So basically like, I don't know. The problem is I'm such an optimist. I'm like, my body will bounce back. It's no big deal. But maybe I should just be looking at cold races.
That's your alternative idea.
Well, so here's where the hardest part of this year, last year, wasn't necessarily the racing stuff. It was like a couple weeks after Kona, like I was just trying to run for fun. And like I was having symptoms, and like we're talking end of October in New Hampshire, it's like 50 degrees. Temperature's not an issue. And I was having serious problems then. And that was the hardest point of the year, because all of a sudden this is not necessarily, a temperature thing. It gets exacerbated then, but this is something that is keeping me from doing the things that I love.
Right.
So it went from a professional thing to a personal thing. That was a really low point for me. Is I just want to go and do a tempo run for fun because it feels good, and it's 50 degrees and I can't.
Right.
So that was hard. Yeah. But
so
I'm starting to be able to do workouts, and I haven't had any problems, since.
That's what I was about to ask. So you started to be able, you're like working back into things, or you're not sure still?
Yeah. And so the the race in Campeche was like 100 degrees and humid and
naturally,
unbelievably. Yeah.
Right.
And it was way slower than my Ironman pace for a 70.3 for the run in particular. And there was some walking involved. But you know what? I didn't DNF and it was really hot and I didn't pass out. So like I'm of two brains. The rational part or the emotional part of me is like, oh, you know, it was just the fact I didn't do any heat training. I'm totally fine. I can race in the heat again. Like my body's totally normal. I just needed to be more prepared. And then the other part of me is like, there is a chance you will never be able to race normally again.
Right.
But that part of my brain, the rational part, is a real jerk. So I'm not going to listen to it.
You're like, fuck it, no. Yeah. Oops, I'm actually not sure if I'm allowed to swear on the podcast yet. Okay, so you're still just feeling this out then, and trying to figure it out and seeing what happens this year. So actually, everyone being up in the air works totally fine for you because you're also up in the air and waiting to see how things go.
Totally. So there have been other athletes who've had serious like brain, meltdowns and done damage to their brains before. And if you want to Google some or YouTube something else, like Callum Hawkins at Commonwealth Games a couple years ago. It was very hot marathon and it was pretty dramatic. But like 18 months later, something like that, he was able to do very well at the World Championships last year in the marathon in Doha, which was extremely hot.
Right.
So, maybe I just need a few more months for my brain to heal. Or alternatively, Kelly, because this podcast is going to go gangbusters.
You're just going to become a professional podcaster.
There is no. I was going to say there is a neurologist listening to this who's like, I can fix Sarah. I know what's wrong. So if you are that neurologist and you want to help me out, get back in my career and not pass out again 700 meters from winning a major race, call me.
There you go. Slide into her DMs real fast.
Slide into my DMs, baby.
Okay. See, this is a great plan. See, we're bringing people together with the Triathlete Magazine podcast. This is fantastic.
Excellent.
Yeah. No, I mean, brains do take a long time. My husband's recovering from a brain surgery. And, it does. It just literally, the experts say, like, just takes some time. It takes a long time. Yeah.
Takes a long time. Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like all these other things people are going to want, like usually we would be like, what are your plans this year? What do you want to do? And like, none of that applies right now. So it's like, all right. And
nobody has plans right now.
Nobody has plans.
Here's the thing. Here are what my plans are.
Okay.
So, I'm going to continue exercising because I love it. And right now that exercising consists of doing gym work and biking and running because I'm not one of those fancy people with those pools in my backyard. And that's okay. Like,
also you live in New Hampshire, so
and
pool in the backyard.
No, but like those endless pools that the handful of people are posting about, and we're all very jealous of them.
Very jealous.
Until you remember we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and let's be honest, there are more important things to think about. So I am thinking about those important things and how I can be of use to the people around me. My brother and my sister-in-law are both physicians, and they are prepared for things to get really bad. And I am going to be taking over the education of my 7 and 9-year-old nieces.
Oh.
Because kids are not in school right now.
Okay.
So that's like for the next couple months, I'm going to be Miss Sarah, laying down the law, making them read, making them do math. Like, it's keeping me up at night coming up with plans.
The only two subjects you can come up with. It's going to be great.
No, I have a whole plan. They're going to do nature journaling. We're going to go on hikes. I have like arts and crafts plans. Oh, yeah. I'm going to crush it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think we all are going to have to kind of come together as a country, and help the people who are on the front lines. And that's me doing my very, very small part.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
Which is crazy because professional athletes are very selfish. So the fact that,
everyone always says that, but honestly, like, I mean, some of them are dicks, but lots of them are nice. Like lots of pros will help each other. Everyone helps each other.
It's not selfish. It's self-involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're trying
but
to
that's how you're successful. No, honestly, you have to put your training ahead of everything else. That's how you are good to a certain extent. Yeah.
You get the training in. Yeah. All right. So I told you I was going to do some kind of final segment that was fun that I hadn't decided on yet.
Shoot.
But here's what I've decided. Ready? And I think I'm going to do this with all of our rotating co-hosts in the next few weeks. We're going to play internet version of Have You Ever? Or not Have You Ever, sorry. Would You Rather? Would You Rather?
Oh, no.
This is very weird. You ready? So here's today's question. Would you rather, this is coronavirus edition, never go outside for the rest of your life, but you can exercise as much as you want? Like you have all the best facilities, like craziest treadmills, bikes.
Okay. Or
you can go outside, but you don't get to exercise again for the rest of your life. Like you physically can't swim or bike or run. Which would you pick?
Well, what do you consider exercise?
Well, I mean, you're like going to walk aggressively. That's the extent of what you can do. Okay. Is you can like walk.
Be outside.
Yeah. See, that's what I think I would pick too. Yeah.
I think, humans are hardwired to need lights and nature and, not be
sun
inside. Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. So you think about our the Would You Rather. I'll have a new one next week. And thanks everybody for listening. And thanks, Sarah, for joining us.
Can I do my Would You Rather with you?
Oh, I was going to wrap it up. Sure.
I mean,
what is your Would You
it's
Rather?
A classic. Would you rather have legs for fingers or fingers for legs?
Well, how would you mean feet? Because your legs as your fingers would be really long.
Just little tiny.
Little tiny legs? Like that doesn't even make any sense.
Okay, you can wrap it up now.
You're like, all right. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to the first ever episode of our new Triathlete Magazine podcast. This has been Kelly O'Mara, and I want to thank Sarah True for joining us. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and tune in next week. All right. Until then, keep training indoors.